Hey, welcome to Season 2, Episode 16, also known as Episode 48 of the Retro Game Club podcast. I'm Hugh, and joining me is another person who forgot about the Sega Saturn 25th anniversary last episode, Rob.
Yeah, but in my defense, I also forgot about it during its 0th anniversary. I was not that excited for the Saturn when it came out.
Yeah. I happened to be working in a store the day that the Sega Saturn surprise launched.
Was it nuts or was it...
No, because no one knew it was coming, so we got like maybe 6 to 12 units. I'm thinking closer to 6. I don't remember exactly. But we had a few people who'd either reserved it or pre-ordered it, and we had kind of called them up out of the blue, and it's like, hey, remember the Sega Saturn? Well, it's out now. And then they either came and picked it up, or they said, yeah, you know what, I changed my mind, right? And then it only came with a couple of games, and the problem really is that, like, developers were still planning for whatever the September release date to release games. So there was, like, 3-4 months where there were just no new games for it. So that was the downside. Like, you have it, and then when the Sony PlayStation launched, it had a pretty impressive library at launch.
Yeah, Sega of Japan, not the best record on launches and really anything around the era.
Yeah, so that was happy 25th anniversary belatedly to the Sega Saturn.
Yeah, maybe we should start picking. We don't pick many Saturn games on this show.
No, I've done 1 or 2. I think I did Daytona a while ago. Mm-hmm. Maybe if there's an NBA season, I'll do NBA Jam around then.
Have we done NBA Jam yet?
Yeah, we could have. I guess I have to check our spreadsheet.
Yeah, I don't know if we have.
Otherwise, I will pick, I don't know, Virtua Fighter 2 or something.
Yeah. What else has been going on?
Couple of things. So, like, I have like a list of eBay searches that I follow, like probably everybody else does. And I really haven't checked it in a while. And I went to see, I'm like, hey, you know what? I know this is like a very horrible thought of mine. Like, I bet things are cheaper right now on eBay. You know, because of this whole thing we're doing and people not spending money on like frivolous items right now. Mm-hmm. No, I was wrong. Everything seems to have gone up at least 20% on eBay. Like, not sure how that works out, but I've decided I'm going to stay off eBay for about a year now.
Maybe because no one wants to leave their house, so everything's mail order, and eBay is part of that?
Yeah, maybe, but, like, are people really, like, I mean, I tend to look for, like, fairly, like, there's a couple slightly obscure games that I just kind of have a search for, and I'm, you know, waiting to see when, you know, when they might come down in price. But no, it's exactly the opposite. So I don't know. Like, I don't think people are, like, you know, looking for obscure games to help them get through quarantine when they're out of work, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe. They got their government check, and you need a way to entertain yourself somehow. I don't know.
The other thing is, like, my kids wanted to play some 4-player GameCube this week. There's a couple, like, GameCube. Have you ever played the, this is a really... Speaking of obscure games, have you ever played Muppets Party Cruise on GameCube?
I have not, no.
Okay. So if your kids are aware of Muppets, you should probably track down a copy of that game. It's probably on other systems too, I don't know. It's actually a really fun, like, Mario Party style game. And the mini games are, like, easy enough that anyone can play them. Like, it's not, it doesn't require a great deal of skill to play the game. And yeah, there's a PS2 version that seems to be pretty cheap on eBay. So the problem is I don't have 4 working GameCube controllers anymore. I only have like 3 working GameCube controllers, and then I have this adapter that I can't remember how long I've had it, but it's like a Hyperkin adapter where you can plug a PS2 controller into a GameCube. It's a neat adapter. That thing is like $60 on eBay right now. But then I got to thinking, like, there are people making GameCube-style controllers today, mostly to play Smash Brothers. Do you think someone could make me a reverse GameCube adapter? Like, does that make sense? to like
describe that, yeah.
Well, so there's an adapter where you can plug a GameCube controller into your Switch to play Smash Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people make GameCube style controllers that have the Switch plug. Usually plug directly into the Switch, no adapter.
Mm-hmm.
But I want an adapter so I can take that GameCube style controller and actually plug it into a GameCube.
So pretty much USB to GameCube?
Yeah, USB to GameCube adapter, which no one makes. I can find the opposite. I don't know why you'd ever want to use a GameCube controller on your PC, but if you want to, you can get that adapter.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it's mostly for the Switch or Wii U, right? To play Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
But there's no shortage of GameCube controllers. Like, I can get a GameCube style controller for $20. What I can't get is an actual GameCube controller. So, like, it's very odd for me. All right, so yeah, that's been kind of my angst this week. But yeah, the GameCube and the Wii are definitely getting a lot of mileage in my house lately. They've both been resurrected during this whole thing that we're doing.
That's
what
cool.
about you? How have you been staying sane?
Mario Kart 8. I've been playing it with my 4-year-old son, and he kind of gets it sometimes. I got the I'm gonna hold these up for the camera so everyone else can't see, but for the Switch, it's like a little steering wheel that you put the Joy-Cons in. So he plays with that, and we go to 50cc mode, which I didn't realize because I would never play 50cc mode, but without him. But you don't even have to press the A button to go in that mode. You just kind of go. It's kind of like easy mode, and you can't fall off any sides either. So I've been kind of playing that with him and pretending like he wins every time. And then because of that, he's been really into Mario. You know, a long time ago, I got him a Yoshi doll, so he always knew who Yoshi was. And every once in a while, we'll see Yoshi and, a Mario thing, while finding stuff on Netflix and whatnot for him to watch while we're trying to entertain him while me and my wife are trying to get work done during the day. The Super Mario Brothers Super Show is on, I think, Hulu. And also Captain N, that's also half Super Mario Brothers. I forget when it was like that. And then also there was a Super Mario Brothers 3 adventure show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have that on DVD.
That's the better of all of them I listed. The Super Mario Brothers Super Show is, and I watched that when it was new when I was a kid, but that is really strange. Not even the Captain Louie parts, but, doing Elvis impersonator stuff and Frankenstein stuff, but also the cartoon itself is very Super Mario Brother 2 heavy.
It is,
which is it's strange because Super Mario Brothers 2 is a dream, right? In Mario canon, but they didn't know that back then, I guess.
Well,
maybe the animators thought that's where the whole series was going. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, you needed more characters. So, like, first of all, are you sure it's not well, Super Mario Bros. Super Show, I thought was on Netflix, because my kids have watched. We don't have Hulu.
Possibly, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it could have changed. I mean, stuff shifts around all the time, so I don't know. And they don't have the Zelda cartoon on there, which is disturbing, but no, it's not disappointing. What's the word I'm looking for? Disappointing.
Yeah.
That's a more accurate word. Which, of course, I mean, I have that on DVD also, because I'm a crazy person. But yeah, I really... the Zelda cartoon I thought was great, and that's very, like, Zelda 1 and 2 kind of hybrid. But yeah, the setting of Super Mario Brothers Super Show, the cartoon, is definitely the sort of dream world of Super Mario Brothers 2. And I'm guessing it's just because that was the newer game, and because it's maybe a better setting to work with. Like, there's more...
It seemed like an odd
there's more
choice
enemies.
They really leaned into it.
I mean, like, let's face it, Super Mario Brothers has basically 2 enemies in the overworld. I get there's also, like, the water, there's birds and stuff, but there's really essentially 2 enemies that are, like, 90% of the enemies you encounter.
Yeah.
So, by making it set Mario 2, you have, like, a bunch of you have mini bosses, you have Birdo and Shy Guy. You have like all these new characters that you can introduce.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you have different like settings. You have like ice levels and so on.
Desert,
right?
And yeah.
Yeah. And you don't really have that in the original game. It's just a lot more material to work with.
It was just something I didn't remember it being that way. I just remembered it being Super Mario Brothers. But wow, those skits with Captain Louie and the other guy, and like Winnie Cooper's on there, and Sergeant Slaughter's on there, and
Cyndi Lauper's on there. Ernie Hudson, I believe, is on one.
Wow,
a lot of like celebrities that kids would not know who they are.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Oh yeah, and Captain N was the same way. The episode he watched before, he did not like Captain N. He kept asking for Mario, but was the Larry Bird episode. So I had to describe Larry Bird to him, and he just wasn't getting it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, even if you were a kid in the year that Super Mario Brothers came out, right? They had celebrities that you had no clue who that was.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I mean, maybe you saw them on like the $64,000 pyramid, one day on summer vacation, right? These are like old timey celebrities.
Yeah. Really strange show, but I know there's a Mario movie coming out soon, so hopefully they raise the bar a little bit.
Yeah, I still think the cartoon holds up okay. I think it's all right.
Yeah, hey, I've been enjoying watching it with him, so it's definitely better than like Teletubbies or whatever else he could be watching.
Yeah, and you really, going back to the Mario 2 thing, like, you really wouldn't have Toad as a major character. Like, Toad became a major character in Mario 2. I get it, he's, at the end of each stage in Mario 1, but he doesn't really have, like, much of a role in the game other than, you being disappointed that you didn't rescue the princess.
Yeah. Well, also, there's something I wanted to call out, that Toad uses his hat as a parachute in the Super Show, but in canon, that's his head. His hat is his head. So.
Oh, it's not a hat. That's true. Yeah.
So a lot of continuity issues there.
Yeah. Well, it's a cartoon for children.
I'm calling them out. I'm writing on their comments.
Yeah.
Should we? We actually have a lot of news here.
Yeah, we should probably get to the news. Much I enjoyed talking about Super Mario Bros. Super Show. Some of these are quick topics. Mike Tyson wants to make a new Punch-Out game with his Cannabis company. I mean, he's not going to get the license. He'll get some developer to write some sort of boxing game that he's in. So.
Well, this is a story on Nintendo Life, and if you click on the link with the Nintendo Life, it brings you to the actual interview, and he's barely coherent in the interview. Now, he's getting in shape and stuff again and trying to make a comeback, which is good for him, but yeah, he is not going to make a Mike Tyson's Punch-Out game. He may come out with a boxing game with his name on it, but it will not be called Punch-Out.
It will not be called Punch-Out.
And it will not look like Punch-Out either. I'm sure they would sue for that as well.
Right. Let's see, Hackaday, putting an arcade cabinet inside of an NES controller. So if you have exceptionally good eyesight, you can do this hack, I guess.
And it requires a lot of soldering. So you need to be an exceptional solderer as well. But this isn't a Raspberry Pi Zero they're putting into a controller, which you can do. So I don't know why you would actually do this over that, but this this accepts 4 games, and the only one that they really show is Pac-Man. But it's pretty neat looking.
There's no possible way I could play this. That is a really small screen.
No, in the Raspberry Pi Zero hack, I'm talking about the screen isn't in there. You have an HDMI out coming out of your controller, Yeah, so if you're looking for a project to do, it's not a bad one if you have some skills. The one that happened, I think, while we were recording our last episode, Nintendo takes action against that really good Super Mario 64 PC port. Shocking.
Yeah. Don't do that kind of stuff. If you're going to do a homebrew project, stay away from Nintendo IP, no matter how awesome you think your project is.
Yeah.
Unless you live in some country that Nintendo lawyers can't touch you in. If you're in North Korea and somehow are listening to the show, right, go ahead and do your Nintendo-themed project.
And don't put it on a website. Just throw it on a torrent. Like, go to like a coffee shop, get a VPN out, throw it on a torrent, wait till it's out there for a little bit, and then let the world do your bidding for you. Don't.
Yeah. Or just don't do that project at all.
Yeah, or don't, because not a lot of people will be able to see it. This is a bit of a strange one for me. This is on RetroArch.com. Sega 32X noise fix tested. So apparently 32X had a noise issue, and that doesn't mean audio noise. It means noise in the video. And there's a lot of comparative pictures here. What this comes down to is, you have the 32X and the Genesis work together by combining the video signals. So sometimes there'd be a Genesis signal on top of the 32X signal or vice versa. And it was the 32X that added some noise because it had some bad capacitors in there, or not great capacitors, I should say. And
so you're talking like the image is slightly distorted because of
cheap parts,
electromagnetic waves, or whatever the right term is.
Yes, because of science and electricity and stuff. Mm-hmm. So there's this cap kit, a capacitor kit, where again, if you're decent at soldering, you could buy this kit for $6, and at that price, it's probably pretty much wholesale. I don't think they're making money off this, but you could replace some of these capacitors in your 32X, and it'll look a little bit different.
I can't tell. I'm looking at their screenshots.
That's
and
what
I
I was going to
believe
say.
them. I can't tell you what's different between these screenshots.
These screenshots are of
It's Virtua Racing.
Yes, thank you. I forgot English there. And I guess the gray looks a little less blotchy if you really squint your eyes. Or if you were on maybe a 200-inch TV. But, I mean, it looks great, I guess. Oh, when I zoom in, I guess the blues are a little bit deeper. The yellows are a little bit deeper. But I never noticed anything negative in the past. So, but still pretty cool that people are making enhancements even today. MicroProse is back.
Yeah. They were bought by a fan. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the original CEO is still on the advisory board, but they're coming back with modernized games. So if you were a fan, I mean, they did XCOM. What else? They did Falcon. So they're pretty much coming out with like World War and militaristic type games.
Yeah. So the person who bought it works on other military simulation games. Apparently was a big fan of MicroProse and had already previously purchased some MicroProse IP that had been unclaimed for years, and I guess now owns the whole thing and is going to bring back, stuff under the name, in similar style games, right? I mean, they did a lot of military sim games. I know they had other stuff, but it looks like that's essentially what he's going to focus on.
Which isn't a bad thing. I think MicroProse is a good name in publishing. They had some good releases and some quality stuff. I remember they had, some of the great big boxes for their games. And I have no reason to think this guy will, let's see how he does before judging him. I have high hopes for this.
Yeah. I actually think this could work out.
Yeah. So it's good to see a familiar name back in action, and that the original CEO, is still around.
Kirby developer wants to make a non-action Kirby game.
So what do you think it's going to be? JRPG?
Yeah,
Dating?
Kirby RPG maybe. I mean, I guess Mario RPG has mostly worked out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Kirby RPG. Let's go with that. If it's not action, I mean, what else could it be?
Yeah.
Kirby Super Detective or something?
Mahjong.
Mm-hmm. That could work, yeah. Poker and blackjack.
And he said, so, and it could be more than one, because he said, he'd love a lot more spin-offs of Kirby, and, we're still just at the tip of the iceberg with Kirby. So, that's a series I just never really got into, only because it's just something I haven't gotten into. I know Kirby games are loved, but it's one of those franchises that I really need to go back on the backlog category.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby's Epic Yarn is pretty great. Mm-hmm. Honestly, that was one of my favorite games of the last decade.
What's the one on GameCube?
Well, GameCube has a couple. It's got some weird stuff like Kirby's Air Ride, which is like a racing game, but there's kind of no time. It's hard for me to describe that one. And then, is there another one? I'm also thinking of the Kirby's like Air Ride or whatever it's called.
I'm trying to think. Isn't there like a robot one? No. Gosh, people are probably screaming at me.
Yeah. I'm only familiar with the one. Well, let's move on from Kirby. But play Kirby's Epic Yarn. That is really good.
I am not qualified to talk about Kirby. Okay, sorry, go on.
No, that's all right. Siliconera wonders how many series can be turning 35 this year. Is it because a lot of series started in 1985?
I think that's the reason. I don't know why they don't get this.
Why? But... Yeah. Why are so many people turning 40 this year? Isn't that weird?
They go on to list Super Mario Brothers, Carmen Sandiego, Gauntlet, Ghosts and Goblins, Excitebike, Paperboy. It's not that big of a list, but
yeah, and Paperboy's not really like a series that you think of today as being an active series.
Same with Excitebike. So
yeah, has there been an was there?
They did a 3D one.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not a.
So I guess there's more than one
series. Japanese arcade background sounds.
Yes, this is on Kotaku. The sound of a Japanese arcade is a beautiful thing, and there is a YouTube video here with what is that? 4 hours of just background ambient sounds. So if you need something to calm yourself down and the sound of a Japanese arcade puts you at ease, we have the video for you.
Yeah. So with this, I'm going to give a quick plug to the site Arcade Ambience. Have you been to this before?
I think so. I'm going to go there now.
Okay. So Arcade Ambience is a project that someone started, I don't know, a few years ago. And it's I think he mostly used MAME to create the sounds of an arcade in 1981, 1983, 1986, and 1992. And you can download them just as like an MP3. I guess you can put them on, listen to them on YouTube also. But they're each like an hour long, and it's just like if you want to have a game room and it sounds like a particular era. These are actually really well made.
This is a cool idea. Yeah.
And you don't really have like people talking in the background. It's not like people like swearing at games or anything. It's just really just like the sound of game trailers and gameplay in the background.
Yeah. Attract mode screens.
Mm-hmm. Recreating Sega's columns with Arduino, which I mispronounced. How do you pronounce that?
Arduino, yep.
Okay, well, close
You got it right. You just didn't say it fast enough for it to sound correct.
Okay. So this is a blinking dot version of columns. If you didn't find columns annoying enough, columns is one of the few like thing falling down puzzle games that I'm not a big fan of. Never liked columns.
It's kind of boring, but this guy uses like the servo mechanics and stuff like that on the Arduino as well. So yeah, it's a 6x13 LED grid that is multicolored, obviously. Hugh has your favorite feature, which is haptic feedback.
Mm-hmm, great.
And some pretty good bleeping sound effects. So this guy really dove into this, and
Well, that's so one of the things I don't like about Columns is the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
I really find the music of Columns to be kind of grating.
Well, this only has the, I guess when you get rid of a row sound.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, and it has a high score LED, too. So, yeah, Moses, I wonder how this is programmed. My guess is Python.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, this is on blog.arduino.cc. And something similar, Game Boy emulator in Python on Hackaday.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, a full feature-rich Game Boy emulator all in Python. And for those that don't know, Python is, I would say, the simplest programming language. Like, if you want to learn how to program, Python is a great starting place.
Yeah, it's a pretty, I mean, there's really not like BASIC around anymore. So this is probably the closest you'll get.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty
this is
impressive.
called PiBoy, Py, because it's Python. PiBoy, and it's out on GitHub as well if you want to, peruse the source code or anything.
Actually, that you mentioned that, learning how to program an emulator, looking at that GitHub, seeing code in Python, it's very human readable. So you might be able to learn something there. So yeah, pretty cool. Gotta love Hackaday.
Yeah, I don't know if he wrote the emulation core or if that's a fork of something else. I didn't really look into that yet. Only because I'm never going to actually compile and build that. 10 Sega Genesis games that should get a remake. I looked at this, and I know I'm sounding like kind of a hater today. Like, half of these games I would really not want a remake of. And some of them got a remake. Like, I don't know about this article, man. Comic Zone #1. I'd be content to never play another Comic Zone game. Altered Beast did get a remake. Mutant League Football was on here. They attempted to kickstart a remake. It did not go well. Gunstar Heroes, I could kind of see that getting an upgrade. Earthworm Jim, I think, is getting a remake on...
It's getting a third one.
Or third one, yeah. Okay, it's getting a new game soon. Ghouls and Ghosts, I don't know. We have Resident Evil now.
Wasn't there an Earthworm Jim 64, or was it just a prototype?
I think there was. There was an Earthworm Jim Sega CD version. That's pretty great.
Let me look this up because... No, it's a Nintendo 64 game, and it does not look that good. So, again, no, I'm with you. I do not agree with this list.
Yeah, this is just 10 Sega Genesis games that I didn't Google before writing the article.
So, Final Fantasy III designer had his own headcanon about White Mage's iconic red sleeves. So, in Final Fantasy III, all the White Mages have red sleeves, and I think this was the first Final Fantasy game where you got to give everyone their skill set.
Yeah. So what happens is in Final Fantasy III, you find crystals, and the crystals unlock different classes. So at the beginning of the game, you have 4 or 5 classes you can choose from, and then you unlock 4 more. But it sort of works like multi-classing in D&D, where you have to forget your old skill, or you can't advance in your old class when you switch to the new one. So there's trade-offs in switching, because basically it means you're starting back at level 1. And this is a game where you already have to do a ton of grinding to survive even a minute. So then going back to level 1 in some class is a pretty big setback, other than maybe you're gaining... you're getting some better abilities, because obviously the stronger classes are unlocked later. So yeah, I think White Mage is obviously one you can get at the beginning of the game.
So the red sleeves, he said, he had this in his head from the beginning, that that is woven in magical material, and it's on your sleeves because your magic comes out of your hands. So it enhances the mage's magical powers. So if you ever wondered about that, if it was keeping you awake at night, we got you.
Yeah. Okay. I just figured, Mario has a mustache because otherwise his face looked goofy when they drew him.
Yeah.
So
that's what I figured as well.
I think his sleeves have red so he doesn't look like a clan member. Is a simpler explanation. Concept artist discusses Retro's canceled Zelda and Mario spin-offs.
So this is pretty cool. So there was going to be an action JRPG chic side story from Ocarina of Time that would take place right after, and it was going to go over the Master Sword's origin. So, and they were going to, form a new Ganon and stuff like that. That could have been
Wasn't
cool.
that the plot of Skyward Sword?
Maybe that rose from the ashes of this.
Okay.
A side story of Boo from Mario, which we probably never needed, where he would learn how to scare. I think those were the only two big ones in here. I could have gone for that Zelda side story.
Let's see. I'm going to power through a couple of these here. How to emulate a color computer in MAME, the ultimate tutorial. So this is just a link to some YouTube videos about how to do, how to set up, because I guess MAME nowadays, you can emulate like anything in MAME. It's not just arcade games. And it is kind of a pain. Like I've attempted to, I can get a few other systems to work, but like the configuration is a little goofy. But this here takes you through how to get through the color computer family of computers.
And it's not easy. There's a lot of steps.
There's a lot of steps. But if you like if that's your thing, it's going to be worth it. paraLLEl-RDP. What is this? RDP.
Okay, let me read this one. It's one I'm very familiar with. Yeah. paraLLEl-RDP rewritten from scratch. Available in parallel N64 right now for RetroArch. So, paraLLEl is a newer N64 core for RetroArch, or it might be its own standalone thing as well, but I just know it with RetroArch and libretro. So, historically, there was an N64 emulator engine called Angry Lion. And it was and is notoriously slow, but very accurate. And recently, say last 2 years, paraLLEl came out, and that added Vulkan rendering for the N64. So, there's OpenGL, there's DirectX, and there's Vulkan. Vulkan is much faster than OpenGL, which Angry Lion uses. paraLLEl uses that and is also very multi-threaded. So they rewrote part of it to make it more accurate. Yeah, you're seeing almost double frame rate jumps. Stuff like 007 going from 82 frames per second to 133. Crazy jumps like Doom 64 from 174 frames to over 320. So, and this is obviously on a really beefy graphics card. Oh, no, it's not. It's from an R9 from 2013. So not that beefy, but a very, a 4-core 8-thread i7 processor. So yeah, it's using the multi-threaded of the paraLLEl. So if you like emulating Nintendo 64, it just got a lot better for you. So that was kind of an exciting one for me. And what I think is the biggest story of the week is watch the original footage shot that was used for the fighters in the first Mortal Kombat game.
Yeah, I feel like this was around before, but maybe not. I felt like I feel like I've seen this video before. Now, it's possible this is another promo tape I had in the game store at some point that we didn't save. That could be, because this looks really familiar.
It's a strange video because it looks like what I pictured it to be. So, for example, when they're doing their flying kicks, they're just balancing on a small set of steps. And yeah. The mechanics in Mortal Kombat 1 are just strange. Like, The punching and kicking always looked a bit strange to me. And now seeing them acted out and being directed to do certain moves, I totally understand why. But it's a neat piece of history.
Yeah, I'm positive I've seen that before, but who knows? Could be a false memory. And last two ones here. You go and do this one.
Okay. Yep, this is another one on RetroArch, and it's MVG test the Polymega Sega Genesis module. So the Polymega, we all know, is the modular emulating station, and they're currently testing this and sending it out to a few bloggers and vloggers to get some feedback. And this is the Sega module, and he posts a video about this, his reactions, and how his tests came back. He tested old games, a pretty big library, and it even included very new games like Tanglewood that came out like a few years ago,
about 2 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said it was pretty accurate. The sound was there. The color wasn't the best he's ever seen. A little dark in places, but other than that, he was very impressed. So if you're looking for feature accurate, you might go with what's the analogs Sega they came out with? Sega Genesis analog MG, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, MD, Mega Drive.
MD, yeah.
Analog, yep. And he said you might want to go with that. If not, if you want something very simple, just go with this. So, yeah, it's cool to see that stuff come out. And then last story, a very simple one. 4 more games were added to Nintendo Switch's online library. And only one of them I had played before.
I assume that's Rygar?
Yes. And then there's Wild Guns, Panel de Pon, and Operation Logic Bomb.
Yeah, this is a very eclectic collection here. Are these these I thought were Japanese only releases? Are they on the US Switch?
I think so, yeah.
I'm impressed with log in and check. Logic Bomb looks all right. Having just played through Smash TV, it's a very similar style game, it looks like.
Yeah, and Wild Guns looks like NAM 90 or NAM 75-ish kind of gameplay.
Yeah, and then Rygar on the NES, which is like nightmare fuel for me. I don't know what it is about the aesthetics of that game that always bothered me.
All right.
So we're going to move on to the featured interview or segment.
Yeah, so we had an interview with Limited Run Games, Douglas and Josh, and here you go. All right, we're here with Douglas and Josh from Limited Run Games. Thanks, guys, for joining for an interview. It's good to have you. Yeah, you guys are actually launching a product as we speak, aren't you?
This is Douglas, and we launched Shantae today.
That's amazing that you did that and agreed to do this interview at the same time. You must be pretty confident in your systems and servers and stuff like that. But yeah, want to start from the beginning, how Limited Run Games started, and if somehow there's someone that listens to this podcast, if they don't know Limited Run Games, kind of give a rundown of what you guys do.
Yeah, so we started Limited Run Games in 2015 as a way to preserve a game that we had developed internally at my game development studio, Mighty Rabbit Studios. We had made this game called Breach and Clear that we had released for the PlayStation Vita. The game hadn't done particularly well in terms of revenue or downloads on the platform. And my company was basically out of work. It was about to go out of business because we didn't have anything lined up. And our games, despite being critically well received, they just really hadn't made a lot of money. There was like a cult following for my first game, Saturday Morning RPG, but as is mostly the case with cult followings, that didn't really result in a lot of money. It just meant that there was a small group of passionate people that loved the game.
Mm-hmm.
So we really didn't have a lot of money, but I wanted to make sure that these games that we had spent the last 5 years building got to exist and last in some way, shape, or form. And the only way to really do that is to preserve it physically. So with the last money that we had left in our bank account, I continued running the company. I paid payroll for the next month, and then I took a loan out against my house to fund that initial production run of Breach and Clear in physical form. And I just kind of hoped against all hope that it would sell out and that it wouldn't end up only selling a couple copies, and then I would lose my house and have to live in a gutter or whatever. But
Yeah.
that didn't happen. And the game actually ended up selling out in about 2 hours because I brought on Douglas early on, and he helped me really push the product out to a community that was hungry for it. I can let Douglas talk more about how he found that community and marketed towards them. But I think between the two of us, we were able to make that first launch really successful. And from there, other people started coming to us with their game or their games that they wanted preserved. And it was kind of surreal because the first company that came to us was actually Oddworld Inhabitants. And I had grown up playing Abe's Oddworld Abe's Odyssey on PS1 and Abe's Exodus. So it was kind of like a big deal to see this game that I grew up with come through to us and say, can we work with you to do a physical release? It was an immediately validating experience kind of right out of the gate.
Very cool. And yeah, Douglas, you want to go into how you kind of marketed to the community off the bat and kind of how all that went down?
Yeah, no, we he brought me on at around, I think it was like July or a little bit before that. He pitched the idea to me, and I had been previously doing community management and technical support and just testing for the Mighty Rabbit Studio side of things. And I was like, okay, cool. We want to do this new thing called Limited Run. It sounds neat. He showed me reasons why he thought it would work, or at least we hoped, because we were both kind of unsure. And then I went online. I looked for, forums that kind of were all about collecting, or places that there was a lot of communication just about games coming up in general, and kind of planted some seeds, here and there, like saying like, hey, there's this new company coming out soon that's going to be releasing limited physical versions. And their first release, I think, is for Vita, because there was a huge Vita community already.
Yeah.
And that was kind of one of the big pushes. We were really like lucky because when we started, a lot of people were like, oh, you're doing a Vita release as your first. Vita's dead. You guys are going to like sink right away. And it turned out that's the opposite, because the Vita community felt very hungry for more releases, since Sony at that point had already kind of winded things down for Vita. And we just really lucked out, and Vita ended up being such a huge part of our business starting out that we have been extremely thankful to be into it. And I remember getting my Vita and thinking like, this is such a cool platform, and then being upset that there wasn't a lot for it. So it was really cool that we were able to preserve so many games for it. And if we hadn't had that first push with the Vita community, I don't think we would have done as well.
Were there any releases that shocked you about their sales, where you didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, and it just sold like crazy?
Because today
Douglas has a famous example that haunts him on this one.
Yeah, and today is the day to bring it up. Since we're releasing Shantae and the Seven Sirens, Josh originally pitched to me that he was like, hey, I'm talking to WayForward about doing Shantae and the Pirate's Curse and Risky's Revenge, and I want to do, I think, what was it, it was 6,000 units on each, 6, right?
6,000 copies.
Yeah, and at the time we had never done anything that high, and I was verbally upset about it and told him like, dude, we're gonna like, this is what's gonna kill us right away. We have only done a few releases. This is too many. And he was like, you don't understand how big Shantae is or how rare the Game Boy version is. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense though. Like I've never encountered Shantae in my life. Like I don't understand why it's such a huge deal. And then sure enough, the game goes on sale and sells out right away. And he just looks at me and I'm like, well, so anytime he's pitched another Shantae thing to me, I just like back down and I'm like, okay, whatever you say for this.
Were there any other surprises when you got started, or things you learned about? Like I personally would not know where to start with manufacturing a Switch cartridge or manufacturing a Vita cartridge. How did you guys figure out how to do that correctly?
Yeah, so Josh can go in the whole thing about how he worked with Sony and Nintendo to get that stuff going, but I can tell you, like, early on hiccups when dealing with collector's items was definitely trying to outsource shipping. So we tried outsourcing shipping originally. Originally, it was me shipping, and then it got to the point where it was too much for me, and even with a couple other people helping me, it was still too much. So we tried outsourcing it, but we realized there's not a lot of care put into shipping collector's editions by other companies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we kind of built an in-house shipping, and it's been so much better that way because we can actually like see where the bottlenecks are. We can see how things are being packaged, make sure the correct things are going out. That was a big thing early on that really, if we hadn't hired a gentleman named Ben Moore, and he helped kind of get us all sorted out with shipping, we would have been screwed.
Wow, yeah, I could imagine. And it might not be the first thing you think of when you think about releasing a retro game. Any other titles you want to speak about that you already released that kind of shocked you?
Night Trap for me was one, because I knew Night Trap was a big deal in terms of like what it did to the game industry, but I had no idea that it would be this like extreme. And that's another game where Josh was pitching to me and was like, it's going to be crazy and blah blah blah.
I don't think I fully grasped that game either. When Night Trap first came to me, I was like, wow, this is really cool. This game is going to sell. But when we initially signed the game, we only signed it at, I think, 4,000 total copies. That was going to be the total flat amount that we did for it. And we ended up bumping that up to 7,500, I think, which still wasn't enough because everything that we put out there sold out in probably under 5 seconds. And I was shocked because this is a game that consistently ranks very high on the worst games of all time list. So I knew it would have a cult following in the same way that a lot of bad movies do. But it really had a much bigger following than I would have ever expected because that 7,500 units sold out so fast that people were sending us death threats. They were yelling at us for probably like a week after the sale. And I feel like still see the ashes of that sale every now and then when we see somebody just ranting about how much they hate us. It always comes down to like, oh, I miss Night Trap. That release really hurt in that sense where there are like people who still hate us because they miss Night Trap. But that was such a hard game to predict because you don't expect a game that is considered terrible to be the game that's going to sell the most copies for you, at least going into it. At this point, I understand that if I put Plumbers Don't Wear Ties on Switch, I would sell 20,000 copies of it. Like, I know that there is demand for these notoriously bad games, but going into it, I never would have thought that. Like, going into it, your conventional wisdom is going to tell you good games are what will sell, not the games that people think are bad. But there is this morbid curiosity with seeing these bad games and playing them and experiencing them that I think really drives people to want them. And I keep saying bad games. I don't think Night Trap's a bad game. It's a game that I do enjoy playing, but I enjoy it for the same reasons that like I would enjoy a B movie. So I think it's still valid to like call it a bad game, even though I wouldn't really say that it is a bad game.
That was one of the first ones I picked up from you guys, I think. I don't know if it was one of the first ones, but it's one of the most memorable ones because I had to travel to Chicago for work that day, and I based my timeline on the launch window of Night Trap, and to get to the hotel, hook up to Wi-Fi, stuff like that. I actually paid for the extra, upcharge at the hotel for better Wi-Fi just in case. And I misread the disclaimer you guys had, or misunderstood it at first, where I wanted one of each version. Like you can see behind me, I have the larger, I forget what it's called, but the limited version of it, and then the regular one. And I put both in my cart, and it wouldn't let me check out because I thought like, it said hey, you can only order one, but it's I thought it meant like one of each. So I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna miss this, but yeah, I was so happy to get that. And speaking of kind of the garbage people of society, you guys have done a really good job of kind of keeping resellers and I guess you would call them scalpers at bay. Was that something you planned ahead of time, or that something you just ran into and thought like, hey, we got to squash this because they're kind of ruining it for everyone else?
It's something that I think we saw it early on, that, especially, the first year or so of our releases, a lot of it became speculators and resellers buying our products. And that really, it wasn't necessarily a healthy business model to focus on selling games solely on possible rarity or possible future value gain.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that like these speculators and resellers, they weren't even like, I'm trying to think of like loyal customers necessarily. Like the minute something doesn't sell well, they drop out. So we weren't building a healthy business by catering to this subsection of people that just wanted to prey on value gain.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got around to being able to be on the Switch, we kind of thought about how can we build a healthier community and a healthier audience. And the number one thing that we thought would do that or accomplish that goal was doing open pre-orders and manufacturing to demand. So with Switch, we made that jump and we started doing open pre-orders and making our games more accessible, but limited through time rather than quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's worked out, I think, amazingly well, because everybody who knows about the releases has a chance to get them. And if resellers or speculators want to buy them, they can. And we've still seen some value gain afterwards. So people who like that still get it, because there is still that limited aspect in terms of time. So we didn't really lose a whole lot from it, but we have a lot less people that hate us at this point. Where in the past, when we were severely limiting things and undergauging demand every now and then, we really had a lot of people that hated us. And still, sometimes when we do a limited product and we don't have enough of it, we still get that anger. Like recently, we did a signed edition of the Streets of Rage 4 vinyl, and that sold out really fast, and people got mad about it. But that was kind of something that we couldn't really fix because we got that quantity from a third-party publisher, from Bravewave. So we really couldn't go up or down in that quantity, and we can't really do open pre-orders on something that a person has to sit there and sign. I mean, we've done in the past, but I feel really bad knowing that, like, Frank Klepacki, for instance, has to sign 11,000 Command & Conquer boxes.
Oh my gosh.
Like, can you imagine signing 11,000 things? That's insane.
That's insane. Yeah.
So bad. But so we try to figure out, what's the best way we can approach each situation where we're not catering to speculators or resellers or scalpers, and we're doing our best to make sure that regular people have access to our products. And on that note, like, we've done a lot of stuff to counteract scalpers even early on. Douglas used to, and he can talk more about this, come in on weekends and actually go through all of the orders and cancel out people who were breaking limits. So he would actually work overtime to try to thwart scalpers. And I got in the habit of, if we had a really popular product, and I knew that the scalpers had programmed bots to camp on the page and watch them, I will occasionally put those products back into stock with ridiculous price tags, because I know the bots will indiscriminately buy the products. So like for Jack and Daxter, the collector's edition, I will occasionally put like one or two into stock at $10,000, and the bots will buy them immediately. And it's always just funny to me to see the customer support tickets from those people roll in, and they're like, "Oh, my kid accidentally bought this." And we're like, "Your kid accidentally bought a $10,000 Jack and Daxter collector's edition?" I don't think so. 1 second after it went on sale.
I like when you changed one of the listings to actually a piece of trash, but it was the same price as Jack.
Yeah, it was. That was for Toe Jam and Earl when we did the Sega Genesis cases. We told people those were going to go up at a random time between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, and people had programmed their bots to buy any listing that had the word Toe Jam and Earl in it that appeared on our homepage. So I remember configuring a listing that just said, "Toe Jam and Earl, do not buy. This is actual trash." And we ended up selling like 50 or 60 of those that were actual trash. And it was weird because there was like 5 people that bought it knowing it was actual trash, but they wanted to see what it was. So we
Wow.
canceled like 55 bot orders, but we had to ship 5 orders to actual people that wanted trash from around our office.
That's
I think
amazing.
I think the worst time we ever had to deal with the whole scalper thing is when the sneaker community found out about us, and we sold the Jack 2 collector's edition, and they literally sold out in like a second, and we found out it was all the sneaker community that bought it.
Yeah.
It's like Josh and I spent the whole day. We canceled like 1,000+ orders because it was just all scalpers.
Yeah, that was pretty insane to have to go through that. And it was the way that they were trying to get around the limits were so I don't know, like non-competent. Like they just weren't good tricks. They were like, let's just add a random jumbling of letters and numbers after the address, and that's going to make it look different or something. And it's like, not when a human filters through and sees these orders and sees the same street like 60 times, but with just a random amount of characters appended at the end of it. Like, obviously, this is the same person buying hundreds of copies. And I can't imagine that if we had actually shipped those, they all would have gotten to the destination safely, because like adding all those random characters to the end of an address is not going to be something that the post office really wants to deal with. I feel like there would have been a high rate of returned packages if we had actually let those go through. But we spent, I'd say, probably at least 30 hours having to comb through orders to cancel scalpers on Jack 2. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, that is crazy. Well, yeah, a lot of these people have to check their anger and probably check their priorities, because, yeah. But moving on to brighter things. Yeah, you said Nintendo was able to help you out get onto the Switch. Have you found it more difficult or easier to work with Nintendo or any other company or Sony with cartridges, or is it easier to do optical media? Because I know printing a lot of anything or manufacturing a lot of anything is pretty scary to make sure, they actually come out correctly.
So I would say that Sony is definitely easier. The process with Sony is pretty much all done from one factory in Terre Haute, Indiana. And I think that it's just a much more simple and streamlined process. The website where you actually build your package and configure all of the options for it is very outdated. It's definitely designed for like 1024 by 768 resolutions. Like, it's a very early 2000s website that needs some amount of upgrading, but it works. And it's kind of, once you've configured everything and put your order in, that's it. You just basically wait for everything to show up. But with Nintendo, you can only get the cartridges from Nintendo. You have to coordinate the packaging of the cartridges. You have to coordinate the print of the cover art and the manuals or any other things that go inside. And you have to coordinate the sealing of the cases and the packing out of the case packs that have all of the finished games in them. We're thankful that our local manufacturing partner that we work with for everything, they actually got certified with Nintendo to do both pack out and print. So we kind of have a one-stop shop for doing that stuff. But Nintendo, basically, they want you to find a Nintendo verified pack out facility. That's the only place where you can actually have a cartridge put into a case. And then you also have to have a print facility. So most publishers are having to deal with 2 different facilities and then having to coordinate between those 2 facilities, getting the art from one to the other so that it can be packed out into a final kit, which is a lot more involved than just placing an order with Sony. Not only that, but if Nintendo puts the wrong build on a cartridge, it's way more expensive to fix than if Sony puts the wrong build on a disc.
Yeah.
And I say Nintendo putting the wrong build on a cartridge, but it would be more like if we accidentally ordered the wrong build, that would be a much more expensive thing to fix. We were extremely nervous when we ordered Celeste because we had delayed the game. We had delayed the game for about a year for this big update. And we were so nervous that Nintendo was going to put the wrong build on the cartridge because their old website, it didn't tell you what version was going on the cartridge. You wouldn't know until you actually got it. And you would just kind of have to hope that they used the latest build. So we were just kind of sweating until those cartridges arrived. And when I tested it out and that final patch was on there, I was so relieved that we weren't going to have to send back like 22,000 or 30,000 cartridges to Nintendo. That would have been insane if we had to reorder those. That would have been an absurd amount of money lost. So that was good. But with Sony, discs cost very little to manufacture. Like when we're just getting, like if we need bulk discs to correct a mistake or something, those are a lot easier to coordinate and cheaper to coordinate than trying to get corrected cartridges.
Do you think you guys would go any other retro mediums, like maybe some some MS-DOS games on floppy disk or anything like that?
So we've done a couple of actual floppy disks with data on them at this point. It took us a while, but we finally found a supplier who can load and replicate floppy disks. So we have somebody that can do that now. I think we just did one for a Chex Quest thing that we put together for General Mills, not the Chex Quest product that's on our site, but they wanted us to put something together for influencers and media people. And when we did that, we actually created a floppy disk that had the MIDI soundtrack on it and some like a README file. But we do actually have the capacity for putting a full game on there if we wanted to. I don't know if that'll happen super often, and I don't know at what point our supplier runs out of supply on floppy disks because they're not making new ones. So it would be kind of like a fixed supply. I don't know where they stand in terms of how many they have, but at some point I could see that running out.
Yeah, how much new old stock do they actually have?
But we have been doing a lot of stuff on retro platforms. So we've done a couple of NES games, and we've done some stuff on N64, and we have some more things kind of coming down the pipe in the future that I think people will be excited about. And one of the things that we're currently working on right now will be a completely licensed retro re-release, and that's licensed in every regard. That's not just software. Like our current retro releases are just software. Like Disney has licensed us to re-release Star Wars for the NES, but Nintendo has not said this is a fully official NES game. Like that's the component of the licensing that we're missing on those releases. But we have an upcoming retro game that will be licensed both in terms of platform and software, which is something that, to the best of my knowledge, has not happened in a very long time, where a third party has been given the okay to release a game for a retro platform with full official support from the platform holder.
Wow, I'm excited to hear about that when you guys could talk about it. Josh, did I read correctly that you were one of the developers on Saturday Morning RPG?
Yeah, so I was the lead programmer and lead designer and one of the lead writers as well. We had a small team, so everybody wore about 50 hats.
Nice. Yeah, we're both the hosts on our show are both coders, so I was happy to hear you're a coder too. What's your go-to language and all that kind of stuff?
So most of Saturday Morning RPG was C#. And I am admittedly very rusty at this point because I've spent the last almost 5 years at this point just focusing on business stuff for limited run. It tends to happen. Like a lot of people I know in games that start a company and they code or program when they start their company, they eventually evolve into being in these business leadership roles that don't allow them to code at all. And then they regret it and their skills atrophy and they forget everything. But C# was my go-to. In college, I learned JavaScript, but Java honestly wasn't super helpful when making games. Unity tends to favor C# versus JavaScript, so I just went with C# for everything we were making, and it tended to work out. I never really interacted with much else when I was making games, but when I was growing up as a kid, I spent a lot of time making games with QBasic. So I had a really terrible computer growing up. This was in the late 90s, and
What was it?
we didn't have a computer that could run anything new. So like I couldn't go to Electronics Boutique or Babbage's or Software Etc. or whatever and buy a new computer game and run it on my computer. I could essentially run games from like 15 years ago, and that was it. And obviously, I had a hard time finding those games because stores weren't selling them anymore. And unless I went to like a yard sale and got lucky, I wouldn't find those games. So I basically just had to make my own games if I wanted to play new ones on my computer. And that's what pushed me into learning coding and game development, getting me interested in that. So kind of
So were you
out,
playing like
me on that career path.
Gorilla.bass or something?
What was that?
Do you remember Gorilla.bass? Is that where you were playing in Quick Basic?
I do remember that game, yes, but that was actually not something that I had, because the other thing that I didn't have was the internet until 1999. So I had to I would basically have to go to the library and say, can you special order me these QBasic books that are only available in like a library like 40 or 50 miles away from us? Because at this point, there was very few libraries in North Carolina that still had QBasic books, because this was, I think, 97 or 98. Like, nobody was really using QBasic anymore at the time. Everybody was using either Visual Basic or C++ or something. Anything that was better than QBasic. So I had a hard time finding things, and then I would finally get those books, and I remember sitting there just typing in the code from the books line by line, but not really having any reference for what each line did, because I couldn't go and look it up on the internet, and the books were really terrible at explaining it. So I had to learn from QBasic's built-in help function, which was not great. The documentation that it was provided with, they really didn't tell you much. So most of the games that I made as a kid in QBasic were very rough or rudimentary, but they're still they're fun to go back and look at.
We played one of your games on stream.
Yeah, we played trivia. So I made the first game I ever made was a trivia game, and it's basically like questions that would have been on the mind of a 10-year-old in 1997, and they're all extremely contextual to being alive in 1997 and being a 10-year-old. And if you go back,
a lot of them were Weird Al.
Yeah, a lot of them were Weird Al questions. But if you go back and try to play it now, like some of the questions are just almost impossible because they don't make sense anymore. Because when I wrote them, they were like, so here's an example. There was one that was like, what's the newest color of Game Boy Pocket? And it's like, it gives you 4 choices, and you're like, I don't know. What was the newest color of Game Boy Pocket when I programmed this game? Because there was probably 3 or 4 released after that. But even if there was, who even remembers what the progression of Game Boy Pocket color releases was at this point? Like, 20 years into the future.
Yeah.
And I think there was also something where it was like, what was on the most recent issue of Nintendo Power on the cover? And there's a lot of questions about GoldenEye in there as well, I think, because I was playing a lot of GoldenEye at the time. So I've always kind of thought that it would be fun to re-release that game as is with all of the terrible questions, but like update the art so it kind of like looks like a competent game, but all of the questions are completely incompetent or difficult.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my history with coding. The QBasic stuff brought me to really like making games, and that led me to where I am today. So I kind of look back on that fondly as kind of a formative experience.
Yeah, my game making only goes to RPG Maker.
Yeah, I mean we had the same thing there where we would make like maybe 1% of an RPG and then give up.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of RPGs made that only got made 1% wise, and then I would be like, all right, I'm bored, or it's too complicated.
You guys, you brought up your you play on stream. I know you have a podcast, right? And do you also have a Twitch channel?
Yeah, our Twitch channel is twitch.tv at /limited run games. We typically play games we're about to put on sale, but we do have like off days where we'll play random stuff like discovering Josh's old games, or back in the day, Josh and I used to play Phantasy Star Online on the stream before we got too busy.
Nice. And is your podcast still going on? I think it was done with one of the
Yeah, it was with Jeremy Parrish.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so
well known for Retronauts.
We hired Jeremy recently to do a lot of our written stuff. So like if we were looking into a release where we were like, yeah, this should have some kind of booklet inside that has historical writing about the game, like we wanted somebody on staff to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to that, Jeremy's kind of taken on some other undertakings. Like he's been doing a bi-monthly newsletter for us where every 2 months we have a brand new print newsletter that goes out with all of our orders. And I think that having that was kind of, well, he's also doing the podcast. Let me finish going over everything he's doing, because it all ties into kind of our overarching goal with bringing him on. So he's been doing the podcast with me and Douglas, and really the goal of the newsletter and the podcast is to kind of like show people that Douglas and I and everybody at Limited Run Games, that we are human and that we are collectors too, so that people stop kind of looking at us like this soulless, faceless entity like Amazon or Walmart or whatever. Like we get a lot of people that just kind of really openly hate us. And I don't really know if doing this kind of stuff is going to change that opinion, but it's certainly going to show the people who bother looking that we are human and that we do love what we do and we are passionate about it. Like a lot of the people that hate us, they think that we're only doing this for money, or we only care about like getting money or whatever. They're like, oh, they re-release those Star Wars games because all they care about is getting money. And it's like, no, I like Star Wars, so I release Star Wars games, because who would pass up an opportunity to release Star Wars stuff? Like, if you like Star Wars, you're going to do it. Like, I don't care if it's the NES game that's not the greatest game. Like, I get the chance to design and release a Star Wars product. Like, I'm not going to say no to that. Like,
yeah,
that's passion driven for me, not money driven. And pretty much everything we do is passion driven. It's not a case of doing things for money. Like it's to make cool things that we want on our shelf. And
yeah.
by bringing Jeremy on, like we're hoping that people see that through the different media that he's producing, whether it's the podcast or the newsletter or tabletop book or little historical notes or passages that are included inside of our releases. Like we just want people to understand that like we're just as passionate about this stuff as they are, and we are not in this just to make money or collect a paycheck. And we never will be.
Is there, wrapping this up, is there anything else you guys wanted to plug or tell the world how to get a hold of you guys on Twitter or the website?
Yeah, I mean, they can check out our website, limitedrungames.com. Our Twitter is at limitedrungames. They can sign up for our newsletter if they want to stay informed. If they're not a big social media person, they can follow me at limitedrundoug, Josh at limitedrunjosh. And yeah, we're across everything. We have a Twitch, we have Facebook, Instagram, even a Tumblr, but I don't think that gets updated. That was more of a joke.
You could probably still find us on MySpace if you really wanted to.
Yeah, but please don't.
We're not going to respond or post on MySpace, but we're there.
And this podcast is a game club. Usually Hugh and I pick, well, not usually, every week, Hugh and I pick 2 games for our listeners to play with us. Anything, about 20 years or older for any system. Do you guys have any recommendations for a game club game?
Okay, I was going to say my recommendation, a game that very few people have played, that I love, that's short and fun, is Dynamite Cop for the Sega Dreamcast.
I don't know that one. I'm going to have to check that out.
It's the sequel to Die Hard Arcade, essentially. Die Hard Arcade, when it came over here, they took Dynamite Cop or Dynamite Deca in Japan and slapped the Die Hard branding on it. So Dynamite Cop 2 or Dynamite Cop is Dynamite Deca 2 in Japan, and it's an extremely offbeat beat 'em up game, 3D, where you can kill people with a fish or whatever else you pick up in the environment. Like, it's a good game. It's a lot of fun, and it got kind of panned at release, so nobody played it. But a lot of the people who did play it have kind of picked up on the fact that it's a hidden gem on the platform, and critics definitely did not give it a fair shake. I think this was a time period where beat 'em ups were getting a lot of hate for their simplicity because everyone was like, "Oh, we want 60-hour RPGs and epics. We don't want a 1-hour arcade beat 'em up where you hit people with a fish." Like, it got some crap for what it was at the time, but it's a very competent and good arcade beat 'em up that a lot of people have not played or experienced. So it's one that I would recommend people check out.
All right. And Douglas, how about you?
I'm going to go in the opposite direction and say everyone should play a game called Chrono Cross, which is like if you want a game that takes forever to beat. My whole thing with that is just, Chrono Trigger is a great game, and I just feel like a lot of people skipped over Chrono Cross because it did change the art style, and it was a very different game, but it has one of the best soundtracks in the history of games, in my opinion, and it's just a very well done game that, like I said, I think a lot of people skipped over, and I'd like to see more people play it.
Well, cool. Well, Josh and Douglas, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll keep we cover your releases on our podcast, and we'll keep doing so. We're both big fans of limited run games.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having us.
All right, and we're back, and that was kind of a strange time of day we had to record that. So, Hugh, you had a last minute meeting. I think you couldn't make it.
Yeah, I had a work issue, so I was not on there. But that's all right. Work stuff comes up at random times sometimes. So,
and it was during the day, so
yeah, that didn't help either.
But again, thank you to Douglas and Josh. Great interview, and I'll be purchasing stuff from you very shortly.
Yeah, I mean, if you have sort of like eclectic tastes, like you like weird games, they're a great publisher. Like for whatever reason, I like FMV games a lot, so I buy a lot of stuff from them when they do reprintings of FMV games, and I think I bought every variant of East Origin that they sold there. And then I just ordered, I guess this is not a weird one, but the new Shantae game, they're doing a pre-order for. It's a pre-order, so I guess they won't run out. I don't know how that's going to work. But I played the last game last year, whatever, maybe a year before, and I really liked it. It was really a lot of fun. So I decided, what the heck, I'll just order the new one.
Yeah, what are those games like? I haven't played them.
They are sort of like, have you played Donkey Kong Country Returns?
Yes.
They're a lot like that.
Huh. Wow.
You have basically unlimited lives in the game, which is good because you definitely need it. I mean, there are some like cheap deaths in the game, but overall they really are a lot of fun.
Yeah. So pretty fast action kind of thing.
Yeah, very very fast. And then it's like, you unlock an ability, so then you can go back to previous levels and explore them more to find there's a lot of reason to go back and redo levels to find hidden stuff after you gain new abilities, and you can upgrade ability. There's a lot of cool stuff in the game.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. On to the reason why we're here, Game Club.
Yeah.
Let's just start with mine because it's a dud. I'm sorry, everyone. So Microsoft Flight Simulator 4. I picked this because I had very fond memories on a 386 SX16 and on a Tandy, I don't know which specs or model, playing Flight Simulator 3. And, just doing the basic stuff like flying a Cessna around and stuff like that, I thought was really fun, and actually safely landing the plane and all that stuff. And
Really basic stuff like flying an aircraft. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and well, it's not fast-paced action, that's for sure. But I liked Flight Simulator 3 because you could design your own aircraft. You could pick from like a Cessna or a jet, like a fighter jet, and give it giant wings, or move its wings around and stuff like that. And it was a really cool mechanic back in the day. And I found out that Flight Simulator 4 had that as well. So I wanted to try it out to see how much better it was. And it was so much worse. They made it so much more technical, where I just wanted to like click on the wings and, hit the plus button over and over again and, make some monstrosity. But I couldn't figure out how to do that in this one. So I went back in 3 and played that a little bit, and flew a 747 or whatever every once in a while, but that's about it with that. I'm sorry I picked a dud this time, guys. I don't know if you went into it at all.
No, I really do not like flight simulator games.
I don't blame you.
I did watch a video here, and I do like that it is the one video I saw, you're flying out of the former Meigs field in Chicago. So I don't know if you know the story there.
No.
So there was a very small airport in basically downtown Chicago on the east side, and it was mostly for, I don't know, rich people to fly in and out of, right? And the mayor, this is back when Richard Daley was mayor. He was mayor basically for life. He hated this, for whatever reason, he hated this airport. He had some grudge against the airport. Don't remember his exact rationale. He wanted to put a park there. He thought it'd be better to have a park there. And he could never really get the okay to shut that thing down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, 9/11 happened, and like a week later, he just sent bulldozers in to tear the airport up. Basically without approval from anybody anywhere. It's like, but I guess his logic was, if I'm going to tear up an airport, this is the time when I'm not going to get a lot of resistance. And once you've already torn up an airport, it's already torn up. Like,
yeah.
You're not going to put it back at that point. So yeah, he just used that as an excuse to probably illegally bulldoze the airport.
Well, it's forever immortalized in Flight Simulator.
Yeah, so it still exists there.
How about we move on to a real game?
Yeah, Centipede. I don't know why I was in the mood for this. I think I was playing around with Intellivision emulators. I own a physical copy of Centipede on Intellivision, but I wanted to try to emulate it. Played that one first, realized that maybe the Intellivision version of Centipede is not as good as I remember it being. Tried the 7800 version, which is actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Now, which version did you have in mind in the last
I was
episode?
thinking of the Intellivision version when I started this. That I wanted to go back and play that, because I remember it being a really good port, and it kind of isn't. I mean, it's better than the 2600 version. Maybe not as good as the 5200 version. Definitely not as good as 7800, which is, I think, the best home port of it.
I would say so too. Yeah.
But for people who aren't familiar, Centipede is, it's a shooter game. You are an elf with a magic wand, although you don't really look like that. And that's why you're miniature and fighting in like a field of mushrooms. And there's a centipede, invading, and you blast the centipede, and every time you blast them, he splits into, more segments. So you kind of want to always make sure you hit it in either the head or the tail. And when you kill it, whenever you shoot a bit, it turns into a mushroom. And you kind of want to like there's some, a little bit of strategy to how you maybe you want mushrooms to appear on the grid, because sometimes you can get it where the centipede enters the screen and just comes right down like a tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can take them out really quickly. And then other enemies are like the spider and little scorpion thing. I don't know what the actual term for that is. And the beetle. Those are the other enemies that come at you.
It's frantic.
It's very, very fast-paced, yeah. I mean, the Intellivision one is not very fast-paced, but other versions of the game are very, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
I never really was able to play it well. It's weird, I use a trackball on my computer, but I can't actually use a trackball for gaming very easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I never was good at the arcade version. Really never had any luck with that. But most of the home ports I can do, I can get pretty far in.
Yeah, I actually have this cabinet, but I have it with a Millipede board with a multi upgrade in it. So it has Centipede and Millipede, and it has a few like home port things, like you could change what the enemies look like and stuff. So I played that a little bit, and obviously it's the arcade. You wouldn't say port. It's just, the actual game. It's fantastic, and I do like Millipede better in every way.
Yeah.
It just seems like a great update, but I actually had to go get some tire work done on my car yesterday, and so I brought my 3DS with me so I could stand outside in a face mask with my 3DS while they were working on my car. It was a very surreal experience, and I had my Atari Greatest Hits in there, and it has the arcade version and it has the 2600 version, and it's pretty cool because it's a vertical game. You play your 3DS on its side, so it's a bit strange to hold, but it works pretty well. And you could flip. There's a few different controller schemes you could do, like right and left-handed, and kind of button reassignment. So that's definitely a great cart to pick up if you have a DS or 3DS. The 2600 port is not great, but if you haven't seen the arcade version in a while, in your memory, you might think it looks pretty similar, but it doesn't at all.
No, the 2600 version it's not a very good port. I mean, it's a very noble effort. I'm sure it was extremely difficult to do, but it's not a very good port. Yeah,
but again, that DS cart is pretty fantastic, and
I have that. Game. I don't know if I've played Millipede on it.
Oh, I played Centipede. I'm sorry.
Centipede
I was just saying. I was just saying
Centipede
that.
And Millipede, and I got all confused and frightened.
Yeah. Sorry. Just at home, when I go to my arcade cabinet, I always pick Millipede. But I pick the Centipede cabinet because the side art on it is one of my favorite arcade side arts. Speaking of which, there was a news item we forgot to post.
Oh, yeah, the prototype Centipede arcade cabinet found one.
Yeah,
that's the article.
Yes. But we want to. We already picked our games. Josh and Douglas picked them for next episode. Dynamite Cop for Dreamcast, Josh picked, and Chrono Cross from Douglas.
I can definitely talk about Chrono Cross, although I will not play through it in the next week. You could do a New Game Plus playthrough in a week easily, but it's a pretty... New Game Plus on there has a fast forward mode where you basically are playing the game at double speed.
That's awesome.
And you're also, level 99 at that point, so...
And a big part of his reasoning, too, was the fantastic music. So if a listener doesn't play it, go on YouTube or something. Listen to some of the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's a good soundtrack. I will talk about Chrono Cross next episode.
Dynamite Cop I've never played. I'm excited to play that in Dreamcast. It looks pretty neat.
I have a big box of Dreamcast samplers. I probably have it on there.
And as he mentioned, it's kind of the sequel to Die Hard Arcade.
Okay, so, I can see that.
But we have some listener email.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out what demo disc Dynamite Cop is on. All right.
Jim writes in, Dragon Slayer was a huge deal in his youth, at least it was to some people. He thought it looked neat, but the gameplay was lacking. It was simply not worth it. There's no interactive speaking. It was really just a choose-your-own-adventure movie. It wasn't great as a game, and he didn't really have any desire to learn all the moves. Having said that, the Coleco Adam port of the game he really likes, and it pulls scenes directly from the actual arcade game. And I looked at that, and not enough people bring up the Coleco Adam. I'm glad you brought that up. And it looks like a really fun game.
I think it is roughly this. It's very similar to the Commodore 64 port of Dragon's Lair. Maybe it was the same developers that did it. Where you're the add-on version I think looks a little better. I guess you could debate. The add-on version certainly seems to play a little bit faster and look a little better, I think, of the two. The C64 version looks great. I mean, for its time, it looks really amazing. But it's the same idea. Like, they sort of do more of a reimagining of Dragon's Lair than a straight port of it.
Yeah, and they did a good job of it, I think. And Astro Smash, he never played the Intellivision port, but he did play the 2600 port, and he says, and it's Astro Blast, obviously, on 2600, as he points out, and he says paddles make all the difference on the 2600 port of it.
Yeah.
His only experience with flight simulators is Sublogic's Flight Sim 2 on the Atari ST, and as for Centipede, he was not good at that game at all, but he also prefers Millipede, and he wanted to point out that Myst sucks.
Yes. So he is not a fan of games with really good graphics but minimal gameplay.
Yes. Yes.
I could go with a whole list of games that he would probably hate then. Like,
his last line in this is just, and Myst sucks.
Yeah.
That should be his sign off for every single email, whether it's about video games or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the cool thing about games. I mean, there's so many different genres and styles of games out there. And I've always still, I mean, for me, Dragon's Lair, like, I'll be the first to admit it's not like an action game. I mean, it is because there's timing involved, but, it's not like, he mentioned Astro Blast. Clearly not even remotely similar in terms of gameplay.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone has their type of game they just don't really get into, and for me it's really JRPGs are kind of, and it's weird because I love East, but it's action JRPG.
Right, it's an action game, whereas you could take like a game by the same developer that's a turn-based game, right, and you would hate it, even though it's like 90% of the same characters and setting.
Exactly, yeah, I just get bored with it pretty quickly.
Let's see, Daryl just wants to thank us for putting the show notes and links in every episode, which is good. I think we were debating whether or not anyone actually looks at the show notes and links.
Yes, we actually got a big social media response on that. It seems like a lot of people do actually pay attention, so that's good to know.
And I'll do the next email because that one's kind of short. Jason says he played the 2600 back and it was new, and recently on the flashback Dollar General console, blah, blah, blah. But to me, the draw has always been the trackball, and he never had one for home use. So if he ever gets serious with 5200 collecting, he wants Centipede and a trackball. I have an Atari 5200 trackball box, but I don't have the trackball. I know that that's a weird thing. I actually use it just to store other stuff at this point. The box itself is huge. I can't imagine. I probably have seen a 5200 trackball in person, but judging just from the box, it's about the size of like a Dodge Omni, roughly. And then he also suggests an open world RPG game for us, Might and Magic 2 for Sega Genesis.
Yeah, I was thinking about that series. It's a good suggestion. There's a lot of suggestions, but that is a good one. Yanni, he sent us a picture of that too.
Yeah, I have played a little bit of this, like literally when it was new. I know I probably played the Apple II version a little bit. Never played all the way through it. But I guess I'd be willing to give it a try again. I remember it has like sort of a pseudo 3D, like when you're walking through towns at least, it's like a pseudo kind of 3D view, like kind of like a Phantasy Star type of perspective when you're going through towns. Phantasy Star is 2D in towns and then 3D in dungeons, but Might Magic, like the entire thing is like kind of 3D, a little bit like a gold box D&D game perspective, I guess.
Okay.
I think that's who this is. I think if you like Gold Box, if you like the Gold Box D&D games, you would probably like this. Except the battle system's not like the Gold Box games. It's more like like a Dragon Quest style battle.
Not a bad suggestion at all.
Yeah, and then there's actually a PC Engine CD one as well, and I don't think there's a fan translation for that. That would be a pretty big effort.
Yeah. I'm trying to find that to see if there is. But anyway, if anyone wants to email us, email at retrogameclub.net. That is email at retrogameclub.net. Or hit us up on social media at Twitter at RGC Podcast or Facebook.retrogameclub.net. And we love to hear from you guys. And yeah, if you would, give us some stars or feedback or reviews and wherever you listen to your podcast. It really helps us. And we do have a few social media feedback items here. I think most of it is I asked on social media any Game Club game suggestions. Millipede is one.
Mm-hmm.
Batman Returns. He said it's a lot like the Ninja Turtles game. Another one for Might Magic 2. Oh, same person.
Really wants us to try Might Magic 2, so I
may have to do that.
There's a chance, it sounds awful, but there's a chance I would probably consider cheating when I played it. Because I suspect there's a lot of grinding involved. And maybe if you could just start, few levels higher, that would be pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if we only have a week to play the game, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would be a pro. I wouldn't try and finish that game in a week. I don't, but it would be a background game for a while.
He also recommends some of the military games on NES, like Platoon or Rambo. Yeah. SimCity on SNES is another one. Karnov or Kabuki Quantum Fighter, which I have thought of both of those too. Gorgon on Apple II. And Eastern Front on the 8-bit Ataris. Fantasy Zone on Sega Master System or iRobot for Atari Arcade. All good suggestions.
I've not played many of these games. I mean, I've played Fantasy Zone. I've played Karnov. Have not played Eastern Front. Maybe tried iRobot, but I don't think more than a minute or two. Yeah, most of these games I haven't really played much.
Have you done Kabuki Quantum Fighter? It's a good one.
I don't think I have. I'm going to look at a picture of it right now and see. Maybe I did. No, definitely not. But this looks pretty good. Developed by Human Corporation. Oh, good. I was afraid it was AI generated. Well, it's like Shantae, where you attack things with your giant ponytail.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'll give it a try. Why not?
Yeah, it's cool. So I promised everyone on the social media that I would pick one of their suggestions, and I will, except this week, Josh and Douglas picked our games. So again, those games are Dynamite Cop on Dreamcast and Chrono Cross.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that a wrap?
Yeah, I think so. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.